Welcome to this video. We're going to discuss now exercises 6 to 9 of chapter 26, Saving, Investment, and the Financial System. So this is a book of Gregory Mankiw, Principles of Economics. So, sixth question. Suppose that Intel is considering building a new chip-making factory. Assuming that Intel needs to borrow money in the bond market. Why would an increase in interest rates affect Intel's decision about whether to build the factory? So, so this is important to first set up a little bit this question. So remember about the bond market. So these bonds is like debt. This is debt that is issued by a company. So someone, a lender, naturally will deposit trust in that company that this company is going to give you money back. So this person put this money as as just like a lend for this particular company. So naturally, what about an increase in interest rate? So then this access to capital is more expensive because you need to pay more for this the same lend to your to the people, to the lenders. So when you borrow money, so you need to pay more for that for that lend. And well, obviously this is important because it affects the decision, because the profits that you are waiting for that chip making factory should be higher. Otherwise, you cannot repay this money back to your to your lenders, and actually you will be like in default. If Intel has enough of its own funds to finance the new factory without borrowing, would an increase in interest rates still affect Intel's decision about whether to build the factory? Explain. So then, obviously, we need to know about maybe you have like enough funds for this, so you don't need to ask for money. And what about if the interest rates affects? Obviously, because at this point saving is more attractive. So then naturally maybe you will be tempted to, instead of building a new chip making factory, you can put that money as a saving, because maybe you will receive even more money just with this decision. So naturally, the same expected profits should be higher than savings in order to have incentives to build this factory. 7. Three students have each saved 1,000. Each has an investment opportunity in which he or she can invest up to 2,000. Here are the rates of return of the students' investment projects. So then, here we have the three guys, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Uh, they have different like earnings or different profits expected for that project from 5 to 10. So naturally, the higher the better. So for Hermione, which be better, so we'll expect higher returns compared with Harry. A. If borrowing and lending is prohibited, so each student uses only personal saving to finance his or her own investment project, how much will each student have a year later when the project pays its return? So first, naturally, we assume that this return of 5,820 is considered by year, and then we are going to have this project done after 1 year. So then for Harry, the situation should be 1,000 should be the saving plus the interest of 1,000. In order to take the interest, you just need to multiply 1,000 times 5%. Remember, 5% is exactly equal to 0.05. So then you will have 1000 plus 50, which is the return of the interest. So then you will have at the end 1050. Then for Ron should be exactly the same, 1000 as a base plus the interest. The interest should be exactly calculated as the same as the previous one, just with the difference that naturally it should be evaluated to 8% because this is the return of this project. So then you will have 1080. For Hermione, you have 1000 plus 1000, the same multiplied by the percentage of the return, which should be 20%, which is this is the return. Then you will have 1200. Then B, suppose that there is school opens up a market for loanable funds in which students can borrow and lend among themselves at an interest rate R. What would determine whether a student would choose to be a borrower or a lender in this market? So naturally, this should be regulated by the interest rate that is in this market, because obviously if this R is higher than my return, so for example for Harry the interest rate is higher to 5, I prefer to be a lender. Otherwise I prefer to be a borrower. For example, for Ron, all interest rates higher than 8 should be better for him to become lender instead of investing in his project. Then other history, if R is lower than the return, then you should prefer you should be a borrower. So for example, for Ron 8% and then the R is 7, so you prefer to become a borrower. Say then you're going to take money and then you can invest that money to at a rate of 8% and you naturally you earn some money because of that difference. Next, among these three students, what would be the quantity of loanable funds supplied and quantity demanded at the interest rate of 7 and 10%? So let's talk about the first situation. So then for Harry, because 7 is higher than 5%, so this guy will be tempted to lend all his money, 1000. Why? Because actually this 7 is higher than 5, so instead of investing in your project you prefer to invest that money or to lend that money to a rate of 7%, should be like higher profits. Then the order should be for the so it should be like supply of 1000. The other guy run naturally because of the interest rate is lower than 8%, so this guy will be tempted to borrow $1000, which is the maximum that uh, he can take because the limit is 2000. Then this should be a demand for 1000 for that guy. Then Hermione as well, because the interest rate is lower than his project, he has a lot of incentives to ask for money. Then naturally at the end we will end with demand of 2000 and supply of 1000. So in this case the supply is not enough for the demand for 7%. Moving to 10%, the situation of Harry is exactly the same as 7 because it's higher than 5. So then this person will lend 1000 because it's better to lend than invest in his own project. For the other guy, Ron, um, this is different situation than before because 10 is higher than 8. So it's better to put that money to the loanable market because you will have better return. And then Hermione cannot demand more than 2000 naturally, so Hermione will borrow again 1000. So then the supply should be 1000 plus 1000 and the demand should be just 1000. So then it's again is not in equilibrium. Then At what interest rate would be loanable funds market among these three students be in equilibrium? At this interest rate, which students would borrow and which student would lend? So then, if R is equal to 7%, we already had that. Supply is lower than demand. If R is equal to 10, supply is higher than demand. So then, if R is equal exactly at 8, so it should be exactly of this like the the medium, you know, and this one the medium should be here, should be 8, which is the exactly interest rate of run. So what's going on here? So Harry naturally will lend 1000 because it's higher than 5%. So it's better to lend it than investing in his project. For Ron, it's indifference because will neither lend nor borrow. He will just like um, use his money. And then Hermione will borrow naturally 1000 because this is a really great deal, 8%. So for this reason, uh, he will naturally borrow this 1000. Then the supply should be exactly equal to 1000, and this is the market of equilibrium because you have demand equal to supply equal 1000. Then E, at the equilibrium interest rate, how much does each student have a year later after the investment projects pay the return and loans have been repaid? Compare your answers to those you gave in part A. Who benefits from the existence of loanable funds market? The borrowers or the lenders? Is anyone worse off? Well, Harry will have 1000 plus the interest of 8% because he lent that money. Then he will end up with 1080. The case of Ron will have exactly the same 8%, which should be invested in his project. Then he will end with 1080. Hermione is different because he will invest 2000, 1000 from own resources, 1000 taken from the loanable market, plus the interest obtained by this quantity, which should be 20% provided by his project, minus, because you need to pay back this money, you need to pay back 1000, but you need to pay to the interest rate of 8% because it was uh, given by the market. So then you will have 2000 plus 400 minus 1000 plus 80. Then we will have 2000 plus 400 plus minus, sorry, 1080. So then you will have back 1320. So what about the situation? Here we summarize all situation in this table with no market and with market with an interest rate of equilibrium of 8%. So then with no market, this person had 1050. Remember this one, which was provided by this 5%, this one by this 8%, and this by this 20%. With the market of R equal 8%, Harry will have 1080, Ron 1080, and Hermione 1320. As you can see, in that situation, Harry is better off, Hermione is better off, Ron is exactly the same. So is anyone? Anyone is, so no one is worse off. And here, who is better, the borrowers or the lenders? Actually, this is a lender, Harry. Hermione is a borrower. They are better off. That's it. Then 8. Suppose the government borrows 20 billion more next year than this year. A. Use a supply and demand diagram to analyze this policy. Does the interest rate rise or fall? So remember, we have in the loanable funds naturally in this market demand and supply. The demand is provided by all people that borrow money. right? And they borrow money naturally to invest. And then supply is provided by two actors here, the part of the private saving and the public saving, which is underscore G of government. So those are like the both sides. And naturally, because of this saving should be lower the case of the government, so the public saving will be lower naturally by uh, by 20 billions. So as a consequence, we will face a decrease of the national saving. So then, which should be the supply of that market? So remember, the axis in this market should be y-axis I, which stands for interest rate, and loanable funds, measured in this case by billions of dollars. Then here we have the supply, here we have the demand. Then this is the equilibrium of that market. Because of the supply was affected by a decrease of the public saving, this should be shift to the left, a decrease. So the consequence should be S prime. As a consequence, we will face here naturally a higher interest rate and a lower quantity of loanable funds in the market. Then, here it is important to denote here that this movement is 20 billions. This one, because this cut of in the y-axis, it is exactly equal by 20. So as you can see, this is the old movement. However, this is not exactly the new interest rate. The new interest rate should be this one, right? And then it's important to know that this decrease or this change of this one is because of an increase of the private saving due to a higher interest rates. Higher interest rate, the public saving will increase and make just adjustment. Obviously, the increase of the private save is not exactly as at 20. So for this, the reason is located here in the middle. Why in the middle? Because we just draw in these elasticities, but we will see some movements in elasticity how this changes. So you can see this is not a complete movement of 20 billions, but we are going to discuss this afterwards. So what happens to investment, to private saving, to public saving, to national saving? Compare the size of the changes of to the 20 billion of extra government borrowing. So here we know that investment is equal to saving in a closed economy. We saw throughout the chapter. So then we saw a decrease of the national saving and naturally a decrease of investment. So the saving, the national saving is denoted by private plus the public saving. So here was a decrease, here was an increase of this one of the private. However, this is a decrease of the national savings, so it was not compensated all by this fall of the public saving. So here is the situation that we saw before, and as we discussed here, this one. So the private, it was like higher I. So for this reason, not like complete movement. For then keeping all the things the same, obviously as an I decrease lower than 20, because this is a total decrease, but just decrease until here. It was just this decrease. So for this reason is lower than 20. What does the elasticity of supply of loanable funds affect the size of these changes? So let's make some two different scenarios. So when it's more elastic, is like kind of less steeper. So here is the situation. So obviously there is a shift to the left. So this is the change. So you will see here then there is an increase of the interest rate as well. And here, when it's more elastic, this is the situation. What is the only difference that I see here? As you can see here, it's important to notice that here the change in S should be less than 20 when it's more elastic, right? It should be like here is the complete movement, but actually this is just the change. So then when it's more elastic, the change in S should be like lower. So it should be a fall, but it not should be too much. However, in this situation, this m0 prime, this is exactly equal to m0 minus 20 billion. So the effect in S and investment is higher. So then should be equal to 20. So that's like the main difference. However, the interest rates is higher, and the S and Y slower, but in this case when it's more inelastic, it's actually higher this fall of the national saving and investment. How does the elasticity of demand for loanable funds affect the size of these changes? So here we have S, we have demand, which is like really uh, inelastic, like really steep. So you can see here an enormous increase of the interest rate, and here is just a really small decrease in the national savings. So in this case, the change in the public saving, the decrease, is almost 100% absorbed by the increase of the private saving. So then this you see just like a small fall of the savings in that situation, but a huge increase in the interest rate. Other history is when there is more elastic. So when demand is more elastic, as you can see here, almost all the change of the because of this demand, which is so elastic. So you can see here an enormous change of the saving and investment, uh, like huge decrease, and then it's always kind of close to these 20 billions. So then here the situation is like with this, the the saving in elastic is naturally higher than the saving in elastic, because this one was like a higher fall. Then, suppose households believe that greater government borrowing today implies higher rates to pay off the government debt in the future. What does this belief do to private saving and supply of loanable funds today? Does it increase or decrease the effects you discussed in parts A and B? So here, the basic assumption that you have here is like, naturally, if you are expecting that higher taxes in the future, you're going to be rational and you will need more money in the future, so you need to save more. So these um, incentives to save more for the private part, for the private sector, then it should be an increase. So then here should be something close to this. It is a decrease due to the borrowing of the 20 billions by the government, but this should be compensated in some way by a shift to the right for the increase of the private saving. However, why I put here this in the middle? This is not uh, this is not like this should be like that, because it's exactly the private saving is compensated in the same quantity as the decrease of the public saving. The movement of the supply curve should be null, should be zero. So then that should be the case. Otherwise, the case that the public saving uh, changes and the um, the private saving just changed by a little, well, naturally that situation, this curve should be closer to this to S prime than the S, initial S. Okay, so then it decreases the effect. 9. This chapter explains that investment can be increased both by reducing taxes on private saving and by reducing the government budget deficit. Why is it difficult to implement both of these policies at the same time? Well, actually, by definition, we know that the public saving is exactly equal as the income plus minus the expenditure, and the income for the government should be the taxes, and the expenditure is denotated by G, which is the government expenditure. If you are saying, okay, I'm going to decrease taxes, what you are doing at the end of the day, you are making this tax deduction and you are promoting budget deficit if government expenditure doesn't change. So naturally, for this reason, they are like contradictory because you are promoting this tax reduction, but at the same time you are making some budget deficit. So this is so hard, so you need to compensate that with other income, other taxes, or you can compensate that with less government expenditure. B. What would you need to know about private saving to judge which of these two policies would be a more effective way to raise investment? Well, I summarize all in this marginal propensity to consume. Why? Because okay, you say, okay, I'm going to reduce these taxes, and then you have more available income, right? So if you're smart enough, you will save that money. That should be a great thing, and then you will invest. Other history, if you start to use this more money, not for saving, but for consuming. So that should be the case that maybe this policy should be not effective. So then this should be this should be the way. Okay? I hope it has helped. It has clarified some concepts. This is like not 100% perfect. It's just like my opinion is how I think that we can develop these exercises. If you think that something can be changed or maybe something can be added, I will be more than happy to have these comments. So subscribe, thumbs up, and thank you for watching our videos, and see you next time. Bye bye.